everybody. My name is Gladys Njiro. Today I have an amazing guest called Abigail Kima. She's the host and producer of the Hali Hewa Podcast. So ideally today the interviewer is becoming the interviewee. And I'm hoping to have a very candid conversation with her about her journey, the journey of Hali Hewa. So Abigail, karibu sana.
Asante.
And to our viewers, karibuni sana. Abby, I wanted us to start this conversation with you telling the audience, who is Abby?
I am not used to being the interviewee, as you've put it. Well, who am I? I am climate justice advocate, very enthusiastic about conversation and everything environment. I am a sister. I am an aunt. I am, I'd say I love good things in life. I love to dance. I love to sing. I love road trips.
Wow. Okay.
But most importantly, I carry this work on climate as a very important part of my life because, it's affecting every one of us from across the globe, from where I come from. So, yeah, I define myself as a climate justice advocate, for sure.
Yeah, that's interesting. And I think it's good that you've mentioned that you love climate, because I don't think we can tell the Hali Hewa story without coming into the climate story. So why climate? Why are you so passionate about what you're doing right now?
So I will not lie and say that I grew up, very conscious of the environment around me. But, I come from a small town called Iten. This is a place where all the runners, or most of the runners you see on national TV representing us in Olympics, come from and train there. So it's a place with high altitude and, grown up with a perfect climate, if I could say that. We practice agriculture as a main source of livelihood, and you'll find most of us during the holidays, like now going to the Christmas holidays, we should be in the farm harvesting maize. And so that's basically how my life was set up. And the reason why I decided to jump into this space is, just looking at the surroundings, because we live in a very forested area. Yeah. And over the years, I saw deforestation happening. It's like after a couple of years, you go back to that place and I'm like, wait, there were so many trees here. What happened? And then I remember when we were young, my siblings and I used to take cows to a certain well inside the forest, but it's non-existent now, like completely. And there are so many trees in that particular area, but now I think there are people who came and encroached the forest and now practice agriculture. And then also there's a stream inside our farm. It's not as, it doesn't have the same amount of water it used to have. It's almost dried up. And during, of course, hot seasons, the water is completely not there. Yeah. So in 2015, we all finished high school in 2014 and you're looking to the next steps of your life. So what do I do? What course do I take? And I always wanted to be a lawyer, interestingly, but then I missed a few points. So I had to look for a different course. And at that time I was like, environmental science. Okay, let's give it a try. But I really wanted to get into the hospitality space because that was what my cluster points could have me take. But I was called to KU, Kenyatta University, and that's where I'd say my journey began. Yeah. So obviously we all know conservation from a standpoint of let's plant trees, let's not litter. But then going into KU and finding this community of people through the Kenyatta University Environmental Club. And then it just made me very aware of what is happening back at home. And I could put pieces together. And I thought it would be really important for me to jump in and do something about it. Yeah. And just sort of create change and create awareness around the importance of conservation, because we literally depend on the natural world for our survival. So that's why I do what I do.
Yeah. It's good that you've said about your journey, and I think it's important for the audience to also know that me and Abby were actually classmates in campus. And the interesting thing the interesting thing is that I'm no longer even in the climate space or anything, but I'm really proud of the fact that you've come, and just seeing you become this person who's so passionate, remembering your life in campus and how passionate you were back there. And also interesting thing is I've been in Iten. So coming from Embu and going to Iten, going around the place, I was so in love with that place. And so when Abby talks about seeing the kind of climate and the kind of injustice that has been done to the climate right now, me coming from Embu and knowing how our place looks like, and now hearing that, it kind of surprises me to just even hear such kind of a thing, because I went there and I was like, oh my God, this place is actually extremely perfect. So I think it's good that the audience understands your journey and why you're so passionate about it. And now I think I would love for us to get into the Hali Hewa story. Why Hali Hewa, first of all? What's Hali Hewa? Why that name?
So Hali Hewa, for the Kenyans or the Swahili speaking people, I literally just took, is it a syllable? It's supposed to be Hali Hewa.
Okay.
Hali Hewa is Swahili for climate, not climate change, for climate or weather. The term for climate change is mabadiliko ya tabianchi. And I think for a long time, we didn't actually have like a Swahili term for climate change, because that's just how much climate literacy was low. And so initially, the focus was ideally on COP27 that just ended in Egypt. And I think from just when the inception of the idea, what I wanted to name it at first was Road to COP27. But very quickly I realized there's so many roads to COP27. And then I also felt like Road to COP27, for people who don't know what Conference of Parties are, then it would sound like a very foreign term. But then, being that I come from Kenya, and at least the East Africa community, most of those people speak Swahili, I thought it would be quite a relatable term, because they can tell immediately from the name that it's going to be about climate. So that's why I went for a Swahili term, so that I can have more people who I actually want to target understand what we're talking about. So that's how I came up with the name Hali Hewa. And yeah, it was just a thing of the moment. It's not anything that was premeditated. It just came, and I was like, sounds good. And then here we are.
Okay. And so the idea behind it, the inception of Hali Hewa, how did that come about?
So I think for people who've been listening, I've been talking about COP a lot, COP27. Those are COP26. So these are basically conferences on climate change under the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. And so the 26th one happened in 2021 in Glasgow. And that was my first time. So they've been meeting for 26 years now.
Okay.
And of course, there was a break when COVID happened. So I went to Glasgow, my first time, been in the space, creating awareness, blah, blah, blah. So for us young people, we are always looking forward to attend this big conference, because it's like everything you know about climate change culminates here. All the decisions are made at COP. So I had the privilege of going to COP26 in Scotland. And of course, when it's your first time, it's not one meeting. It's like so many meetings happening at the same time. There are the actual negotiations, and then there are side events. So I remember half the time feeling very lost, because obviously there are different levels to it. There are badges that you're given, and some have access to everything, some don't. And I had one that does not have access to everything. So I took my time to just sit in a corner most of the time to just follow things online. And at that point, I was like, 2 weeks before I traveled, I started sharing on my Instagram. I'm like, hey, so this meeting is coming up, and this is why it's important. Why should we care? Why should we focus? And so during that process, I was sharing on my Instagram, and so many people were following. And I remember there's a time I didn't post anything and I had like 3 people reach out. They're like, hey, where's the update for today? And that's why I was like, I think this information is important because we come from Africa, we come from communities that are feeling the impacts of climate change to a great extent. And like I said, I come from a community of farmers and we basically practice agriculture, and you can just tell how much the impact it has had on our livelihood. So I was like, let me come home and see a way in which I can still spread this information. And of course, podcast was one of the things that was really growing, especially in the African space. So that's why I went for a podcast, and that's how Hali Hewa came to life. And the goal was to just amplify African climate stories at the end of the day, show the impact, also show stories of hope of people adapting and mitigating to the impacts of climate change.
Okay, so that's a very good story to hear, because I remember when you went to COP, I remember you calling and saying, I'm so lost. Guys are doing their thing, but you're just going around in those halls. Is it halls?
Yes, halls.
Anyway, so I think I would love to hear the process. Now you're at COP. You've got an amazing idea and you have no idea how to go about it, I'm sure, because it's just an idea. Now bringing it to life is another completely different story. So how was that process at COP and coming now back from COP with this very amazing idea of Hali Hewa?
So for me, when I don't know if I can remember exactly at what point I said I'm going to do a podcast, but maybe around week 2, at the beginning, when I noticed there's like real hunger for information. And then I was like, a podcast. Okay, maybe let's give it a try. So those me thinking about the possibility of that actually happening. How do I bring this to life? Obviously, never done anything like that before. Not a communication specialist. So I came back home with, I said I'm gonna write a proposal and see if there's anyone who will buy it. So the angle was I had to have a specific audience that I was trying to reach, and it had to have an end goal or an impact of sorts. So the whole concept was around COP27, which everyone was calling an African COP because it was happening in Egypt. Not that it's the first time it's happening in Africa, but this was supposed to be like an implementation COP, a COP that prioritizes Africa. So I thought it would be important to have conversations with experts and activists. So when I was writing the proposal, some of those people in my head, I'm just like, how am I even gonna get them to bite? Who am I? They don't even know who I am. So like, I mean, I'm just a young person trying to bring change by amplifying African climate stories. So I wrote some of those things down. They looked really ambitious. And I'm like, I really hope this can move. So at COP, I met someone who became a good friend of mine and has been in the space for a while. So when I floated the idea with her, she was like, let's give it a try. And then I came back home and then I didn't do anything about it. And she reached out. She's like, hey, I'm waiting for that proposal. Then I was like, okay, maybe this could happen. So I decided to sit down and just get creative. I've done proposals before, so it wasn't such a foreign thing for me. But then, so that's how I came back home, wrote a proposal, shared it with her. And then now we started just sharing amongst our circles, through her networks, through some of my networks. But I'd say the process was really, really, really hard because at that time I was doing a full-time job as well. And, just trying to find people whose values and purpose aligns with you is not easy. And then, of course, all these things need funds, need money because of the production. It's not like I have equipment or anything. So I needed to use a production house, and you pay for that. So in one thing that I remember so vividly is a meeting with a very big funder. And obviously you prepare a lot. You're like, this is my moment. I have to shine. So the very first meeting, the initial meeting was really good. And I think one of the questions that I had to answer at that point was, who is really my audience? So I thought I had figured that out because I just wanted to reach, like people in the urban and semi-urban areas who have access to the internet, who are maybe doing businesses, who I think would benefit from understanding why it is important to incorporate, climate change in their businesses and in the work that they do. And then also the end goal, which was articulating African priorities for COP27, I needed to figure out how I could also reach policymakers.
Yeah.
So now that meant thinking about collaboration. Yeah, so we were to meet after 2 weeks once I figured that out. So during that 2 weeks, I really had to sit down, think about it. And then I thought, I had a thought of who I could collaborate with, which is Climate Home News.
Yeah.
But at that point, we had not had a conversation necessarily, but it was just a possibility. And the 2-week period was quite short for me to have a conversation with them and have them say yes. So when the second meeting was happening, as fate would have it, that day, lights... There's a blackout.
Oh my God.
And then, so for just a few minutes before the meeting, the lights came back. And then for some weird reason, the internet was just not functioning. So I wanted to use my laptop because it would have me more prepared, but then I had to use my phone at some point.
Yeah.
The internet was dropping. I was nervous. And then they just outrightly said... it's like, we don't know you. You don't have a big following. Like proof of concept first, and then you can come back to us. So I'm like, I need help so I can get proof of concept before I can, I can make any impact. So obviously that flopped badly. At that point, I was just ready to give up. It was around February because I'm like, why am I stressing myself? Like, this is already too difficult. But it wasn't easy, basically.
Yeah, I can imagine. And I think it's really important for people to understand this journey because the audience will see the results. We have seen Hali Hewa come to life, but what's the idea? What's the process? Reaching out to funders is not easy. Even getting those people to interview could not be easy. Yeah. You writing those proposals was not easy. So I think that's the reason why it's very important for people to understand the journey. And you've talked about reaching out to your first potential funder. So did you reach out to more? How was that?
So I kept sending proposals, got a couple of no's, and then I think I got, once I had a conversation with Climate Home News, that was sort of the first step towards the breakthrough, because they immediately said yes. They didn't even give it a second thought. And that's how we were able to now move forward. So because I think I did that meeting in March with Climate Home News, and I only launched in June. So those 3 months of figuring out finances. Yeah. And Climate Home News are even reaching out. They're like, hey, did you, we're waiting. Like, we are really excited about this and we want to help you amplify. Have you started yet? So at that point, I'm just like, no, I don't have funding yet. So they're also willing to help, with the networks and help me build networks. Until now, I met... Outrage Plus Optimism, who host a podcast as well. Very interesting podcast. I think they have a big listening from that other part of the world, led by Christiana Figueres, Paul Dickinson, and Tom Kanak. So all these people are like climate gurus. They're policy gurus. They've been in the space for long, and when they heard about me, they're like, then one of the hosts is not present this week, so come and co-host, and then introduce yourself to our audience, and let's give it a try. So they gave me a platform to sort of introduce myself and introduce Hali Hewa to the world. And I'd say that was the beginning of my breakthrough. So from there are people now who stepped in and they're like, let's help you with the production. How much do you need? And that's how I was able to launch in June. But it was not easy. I will tell you for sure it was not easy. But they're really good people in the world. And I'd say Climate Home News, Global Optimism, who have the Outrage Plus Optimism podcast, are like the people who really opened that door for me.
Yeah, that's good to know. So when you're choosing your guests, because I have seen people from different parts of the world. I have seen Elizabeth Wathuti. I have seen, I think, someone called Zipporah. I have seen other people from different parts of the country and the world. So how was that for you, and why that specific audience, or rather why those specific people?
So I wanted to have a balance of both worlds. So there's your the activists who you all know, who are basically ambassadors for climate change. You mentioned Elizabeth, there's Vanessa, there's Sephora. So all these people, I'd say the climate space is kind of small. And at the end of the day, we all want the same thing. We all want a safe planet. So it was very easy to have our values aligned because, like I said, we want the same thing.
Yeah.
So it was important for me to have conversations with them because they've been here before, but it doesn't mean it stops there. This was just like the beginning. So let's have conversation. We even had Professor Yuba Sokona, who's the vice chair for the IPCC, and he was very graceful. Honestly, he said yes instantly without knowing who I am. And all these people, like I said, it was easy to have them say yes because our values aligned and we all wanted the same thing.
Yeah.
But of course, moving forward, I know there are many, many, many people who are doing amazing stuff, maybe don't have the same platforms as the people I spotlighted at the beginning. So this was just to kickstart the conversation, and then moving forward now we'll, reach more people who don't have the same platform or are not as prominent as we'd say.
Yeah.
Because, there are many good people doing good things out here.
Yeah, sure. So we've heard about the funders, we've heard about the interviewees, and now it's time to hit the start button. I think you mentioned there are people who asked you, what do you need? We'll come through for the recording part. So now it's time for you to start.
Yeah.
How was that? The experience you've never done? I don't think you've ever been in the front of cameras, now recording and you being the host. How was that for you?
I think if you watch the very first video,
I think we're going to link it for people to go and watch it.
You can tell I was nervous. I used a production company here in Kenya. Obviously they're experts, they know their jobs, but then you're in a room for the first time with strangers. They're here to do their job.
Yeah.
Like, after you're done, there's someone coming in, so you have an hour to record. So it was quite nerve-wracking, if I'm being honest. And I left that place, and then when you're leaving, I bumped into a very popular podcaster, and I was like, oh my God. And now it just made me feel 10 times worse, because I'm like, wow, I don't know, I probably just said a lot of nonsense on that set. But it was not, it was strange, it was new, but I just had to push and believe that this would count for something.
Yeah.
And obviously when I look back now, there's been a lot of growth, and I've had such a good run, just meeting people, getting to know their stories. And then what was different, at least for this podcast, is oftentimes when you want to talk about climate change, it's let's get into the science, let's all the achievements you've made. But then for me, I used to ask them, like, why do you do this kind of work? Why is this work important for you? And they're details of people's lives that you wouldn't ordinarily find in a typical interview. And I really appreciated that, and the generosity of the people I interviewed to just share their story, even if it's just a bit of it. So obviously, the first recording was not fun at all. And I guess I'm still nervous every time I have to record, because it's not like being on the camera is something I've done before, but I'm getting better at it. I
think that's interesting to hear, and I will actually say that I have seen your growth, because my next question was how the transition has been, because it's become your life now. We are recording, we're in a place recording a video, and seeing you grow into that person. You have so many guests. You went to COP and that was the work you're doing. And I think now it's also important to take our audience through that process, because you have hit the start button. Correct me if I'm wrong, but at this time were you still in your 8 to 5? Because you said you came back to Kenya and you were still on your 8 to 5 job.
Yeah. So I was still doing the full-time job. So balancing that was not easy. It was not easy at all.
Yeah.
And you don't just show up in front of a camera without preparation. There's a lot of work that goes on behind the scenes. So say you reach out to a guest, you give them possible dates, they say yes, you have to prepare a speaker brief for them. And this I learned from the producers of the Outrage Plus Optimism. So, preparing a speaker brief for them, have them, give them room to adjust or add anything they want to speak about. Because at the end of the day, we are co-creating the episode together. It's not just me. It's, let's do this together. So you share the speaker brief with them, and then now set a recording date, record. And then I must say some of those guests are not in Kenya. So there was also sometimes problems with the internet. Not that we have good internet in Kenya, but sometimes, maybe the other end is not as good. Issues with the audio, post-production problems. I forgot to add that at some point, don't know if it's okay to mention PayPal.
Yeah, you can tell us. I think it's part of the journey. So it's important to mention it.
Okay. So after I received the donations from some of those people who bought into the vision, the money was transferred through PayPal. And I think for most people who've used PayPal, it's not like the best platform for money transfer. So after shooting the first and second episode, the money was held.
Oh my God.
For 180 days. So that's basically 6 months.
Yeah.
6 months. Obviously, I don't have money for production at this point anymore. And I'm like, wow, I was just trying to do this for good.
Yeah.
So now that really discouraged me, because it was in July and I had just shot the introduction, the first episode. And then before it was locked, I was about to record with, at that point, it was the IPCC vice chair. And obviously you have to be so prepared. And then, PayPal does the thing. So that really shook me, discouraged me. But somehow I just found a way to keep going. Obviously with a lot of challenges. But I thought it would be important to mention that part of the journey.
Sure.
So at that point, I was still doing the 9 to 5, and there's the whole process, like I said, the work that you have to do behind the scenes to actually put out an episode. And then I thought social media was easy. I honestly thought, it's just posting. I mean, social media is work. Social media is a lot of work. Captioning, writing captions. I had never thought writing captions was a lot of work in that sense. So there was also me learning by fire.
Yeah.
So you're obviously learning to interview people by fire. Learning the process of just putting an episode up, and then there's now the social media part.
Yes.
So it was just like, everything is new. I'm just learning as I go. And when I look back, I'm surprised I kept going, because there are so many reasons to stop and quit.
Yeah. Wow. So in the middle of you recording and you starting this and your 9 to 5, you mentioned that, behind the scenes, that at some point you lost your job.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So how did you even come to losing your job? Or was this connected to the podcast? What happened? And how was that and the impact it did to you and your podcast and your journey generally?
Oh, yeah. You've put me on the spotlight. But obviously, I won't go into details of exactly what happened, but I did lose my job after I had gone for this climate retreat in France at some point in June. I think end of June. It was such a beautiful retreat. Met amazing people. We were in a monastery. We were taught so many things. I think what I learned or what I loved the most about that experience was the fact that we had over 30 of us who were in the climate space, from activists to experts. But then when we got into the space, we were not introducing ourselves based off of what we do, but just who we are as people. And people shared deeply. It's like we created this family and this bond with people and really got to understand people's journeys. And it was such a beautiful and like life-changing experience for me. And then immediately I came back. It's when I lost my job. So I'd say it was a blessing in disguise. Of course, at that point, it felt like my world was falling apart. It felt like, you almost feel like a failure. I mean, you're only starting out. Are you getting fired? It's only been a year and a half into the, after school, because there was a break. There was like a 1 year break, COVID, and then started as an intern, then was a program person at some point. So, felt ashamed. But what was interesting for people who knew my experience, very close people, my friends, my family, when I broke the news to people, they're like, oh, finally. I remember. But I realized I was really in a very, very bad place. I was not happy. I was in a very bad place. So at that point, of course, it felt like my world was falling apart. But then looking back, it was a blessing in disguise, because it gave me now more time to actually focus on Hali Hewa and just build it from the ground up. And, it's like there was this burden that was just relieved after that happened. And somehow just things fell into place. Wow. Yeah.
Wow. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah, I remember that part. So I think at this point, just to ask you, we have seen the journey. We have experienced it. The people who are close to you, the audience, if you have been a fan of Hali Hewa, you have seen, we've already recorded how many episodes?
So far we've done 8 episodes, which was the initial plan. And then thanks to the good work and collaborations along the way, which I said, when we started, the many opportunities that came about now, we were able to also record episodes at COP27, live from that place. And I had a room at the Children and Youth Pavilion to do that, which was, the pavilion in itself for children and youth was there for the first time. And I had the privilege to do the recording from there. And there was a little team that was supporting behind the scenes with social media, with the editing, because there were also other jobs I was doing at COP27. So it really helped that I had a team that was supporting me from behind the scenes. So at COP, we also did 8 episodes, speaking to amazing young people from as far as Jordan to Nigeria to who are doing stuff at home. So that was also very interesting. And many other collaborations with Earthrise Studio, doing a series called Youth to Power. Having young people say what it means to be an activist from Africa, how climate change affects women and children. So all that put together is, the culmination of, such amazing work that I didn't expect would happen.
Yeah. Wow. To our audience, if you have not watched the episodes, please dash to YouTube and any podcast platforms and watch, because Abigail has done an amazing job. And so I think, what does the future look like next year? What should we expect?
So very quickly, I realized the podcast wouldn't be enough, because through the process, I had an opportunity to go to communities, courtesy of organizations like Ripple Effect. We went to Busia and Bungoma counties in Kenya, had amazing conversations with women who are farmers, went to Isiolo, got to see the drought firsthand. So at that point, obviously, podcast is not a platform where you can really articulate these issues. So what the future looks like is we managed to put up a website, by the way. So the website will now like open up the communication avenues for us. So apart from the podcast, we'll have, articles, we'll have more videos, we'll have new series where we actually go to communities with a very interesting name. I think we've actually launched, so I could just say it. We call the Mashinani series. Mashinani is basically Swahili for, rural areas or communities. So more of that is coming. What else? Just watch out for amazing stuff.
Yeah.
It will definitely go beyond a podcast and more conversations and more in touch with, real lives and communities.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much. I hope you guys have enjoyed the whole episode, and I hope that you have understood the Hali Hewa story. Sometimes it's so easy to see the results, but really getting deep into the story and understanding how someone came to put up something so big, it's really important. So my request to you is to continue supporting Hali Hewa, to continue watching and, giving your stories, telling your stories, because that's how we actually bring the dream of anybody who's so passionate about the environmental justice and climate justice. So maybe Abby, if anybody wants to reach you and watch your content, how can they reach you?
So I am, for the personal social media handles, I am Abigail Kima everywhere. And then for Hali Hewa, we are on YouTube, we are on Instagram, Twitter, Apple Podcast, Spotify, as Hali Hewa Podcast. So you can catch all the 8 episodes and also the 8 episodes that we did at COP27 called the COP27 Sharm El Sheikh series. So you can catch all that. You will not miss anything. We will not delete any of that content. And you can definitely tell the growth. Like from that story, you can watch the introduction episode and see how I was stuttering and stammering. And then now being very comfortable and sitting with people at COP27, you can definitely see the change. So I appreciate everyone who's been watching, everyone who's been following, everyone who's been cheering us on. We can see just how the numbers are growing. And, at the end of the day, we are not doing this for me or myself. At the end of the day, it's just for the betterment of the entire community. And we could be coming to your doorstep very soon. So be on the lookout. There are amazing projects coming up. We'll be reaching out. There'll be opportunities for people to amplify their stories at community level. If you have a tree nursery and you're, trying to have the world see the amazing work that you're doing, then we are the people that you should look out for. I look forward to the future. I look forward to the many things that you're looking to do next year. And so maybe it will be good for me to ask you if anybody wants, because I believe there are so many people who have seen the Hali Hewa dream. They want to support, they want to collaborate. What kind of assistance or help would you need? Let me go back.
What kind of support?
Support?
Yeah.
Okay. So, nitaanzia tu hapo. What kind? So, what kind of support are you looking for? A lot of the plans that we have next year need funding as one of the biggest support that we would openly ask for. And then secondly, collaborations. Because, you cannot do this thing alone. That's something I realized very quickly. You need collaborators, you need allies. And so I'd say funding, collaborations, and then just the audience constantly, engaging with the content because it's important at the end of the day. And there are things that you could definitely learn from those conversations. And there's, opportunities for them as well to be part of that conversation by reaching out to us. And like I said, for example, the website has an open platform for blogs and articles. So calling out for people who would like to write, want to give their opinions about anything, feel free to reach out. Our website is halihewa.co.ke. So you can definitely, there's a phone number that you can call on the website. So yeah, more collaborations, allies, funding, and more ideas to have us reach the people who need this kind of amplification the most. Yeah.
Thank you so much. And lastly, to me, your host who has never done this before. Oh my gosh. Yeah, as you can tell, you guys, I'm so nervous. I haven't done this before, but I'm happy and honored that you brought me out of my comfort zone. So until next time, cheers. Thank you. Bye. Bye. That was